Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scott McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
We will answer the phone at 3 a.m. if we have to.
That is a terrible decision on your part.
Not that that's happening with school purchasing, but we're basically, whatever you need, we'll provide it. As soon as you need it, we'll get it in your hands.
All right, everybody, it's that time again. Scott McTaggart, Pitchwerks podcast. I got to admit, really excited today. Cool show. We're changing up the format, not because of anything in particular, just it seemed like this would be fun. So today, BoXZY. BoXZY is sort of like what you're used to in the idea of like a maker bot, I want to build things, but it's completely different at the same time. BoXZY makes a single unit based on the idea that a computer can point a tool just like a 3D printer, but it'll also carve things out of raw materials. It has a laser etching head. This is a pretty cool product. Now, I saw BoXZY at a trade show, and I kind of wondered, why isn't there a BoXZY in every school, everywhere? Why isn't this the biggest brand name out there? Now, normal people say, well, because they're only 2 years old and, great things take a while to incubate, things like that. But I also am a big fan of giving things a little bit of a push when I truly believe in them. So I asked them to come on the show, and I wanted them to kind of talk to us about how they sell their product, what their company's about, how they basically operated for the last 2 years, building up this product offering and the values in the company. I thought we were starting out to talk about education because obviously you need to know an awful lot about additive manufacturing, subtractive manufacturing. You have to have some sense that you want to buy something like this. Not a whole lot of people have a reason to know about this type of technology. But it's only $4,000. It's not a lot of money. Especially if you think that you might have a product that you want to create. You want to start a new company. You want to offer something maybe in small batches just to see whether or not the prototypes are useful to people. So I really wanted to pick at this. And I was afraid I was going to run into that didactic sort of down-talking condescension that I think a lot of shows like ours, might sometimes get into. So I invited a friend, Lisa Davidson from the Outsourced Sales Manager, to sit in with me and maybe just double-check what my thoughts were, offer a sometimes different, sometimes supporting view. We're going to talk to BoXZY, just see whether or not you can hear where they're coming from, you can identify with what they're going through. I think a lot of us are going to be able to take something useful away from this conversation. I hope you really enjoy this episode. We had a lot of fun making it. Other business, we would like you to rate and review our fine program. This is important to us for all of the reasons I have stated previously, but for those of you who may just be arriving, this helps us to be noticed by the audience that might be out there in the larger podcastosphere. Perhaps tell their friends, hey, I found a well-rated or at least frequently rated program. It gives us an opportunity to act on whatever feedback you would give us. And don't forget, there's a whole pitchwerks.com, pitchwerks.com. Strap in. This is going to be a little bit of a long one, but I think it's worth it. All right, we got to get our giggles out here. We got a full crew in the Pitchwerks podcast studio, and we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to style show. So sitting to my immediate left, we have Hadley Pratt. Hadley, hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Yeah, first podcast, right?
It's my first podcast ever.
Have we met your requirements so far? Very good. Joel Johnson is sitting to your left. Joel, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Well.
All right. And then across from me, sitting in silence for the moment, Lisa Davidson from the Outsourced Sales Manager.
And it's very hard for me to sit in silence. You know that, Scott.
Hello, Dark. All right, so this crew is getting along a little bit too well, and it's going to be difficult to edit some of these things out. Luckily, we have a premium product, which makes it so that you can hear the whole uncut interview, which is bit more entertaining this week than most weeks because there's so many of us here, and we apparently have a slightly bent sense of humor in this room. So we're here talking BoXZY, BoXZY. BoXZY is what I would call instant factory. As soon as you get your order placed with BoXZY, they're going to ship you not just the 3D printer that you're used to, but also what they would call subtractive manufacturing. Is that a term we would use? Yeah. Okay. Where instead of adding something to it, we're removing elements from some raw materials. And also you're going to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of what materials you can use. I think a lot of people, correct me if I'm wrong, they look at a product like BoXZY and they think maybe that they already understand that it's a 3D printer. And it seems to me to be a lot more than that.
Yeah, that's true. So BoXZY, so 3D printing has a lot of limitations, but BoXZY manages to overcome those with complementary styles of creation. So for instance, with 3D printing, you typically can't do metal, and we can shape metal with BoXZY.
How do you do that? How does that work?
So imagine BoXZY, let's kind of put it in like metaphors. So BoXZY is like a workshop,
Okay.
right? And in that workshop, you have the ability to build things up, and you have the ability to carve things down.
Okay.
So what BoXZY does is it gives you two forms of carving, to carve things down, shape them, sculpt them, and then it gives you one form of building. And the building is the 3D printing, of course.
Got it.
So that gives you those impossible shapes. So the things that shape, like sculpt things, that we do that with a spinning bit.
Okay.
And so
Similar like a CNC.
Yeah, like a CNC. It is a CNC
Okay.
unit. So the whole unit, it's a universal platform, right? So the whole unit is a CNC platform, and it's universal. So whenever you put one of these, whether to build them up or tear them down, shape them or build a shape, it transforms that machine by adding a module into it.
So it's essentially the same infrastructure, all in the same frame.
Yeah, so everything from CNC milling or smart carving to 3D printing, it uses the same kind of robotics. And what we did is we took away the individualized function and created this robot that could become anything.
So Joel, you're one of the founders.
I am.
Can you tell us a little bit about how BoXZY even came to be?
So actually, it's kind of part of our lore now, but Justin and I, we always wanted to do a product. We were kind of unhappy with both of the way that we were running around the world doing small business. We had a contracting company. I had just gotten out of college. I graduated late in life. And so we were coming up with inspiration. So we started talking about all the things that we had lacked. We lacked in freedom of creation. We lacked in the ability to scale businesses. That we lacked in the ability to create prototypes. And we lacked in our specifically education. We wanted something that that allowed us to be more expansive and free. And out of that, we thought we discovered Tech Shop. We thought we had created Tech Shop, let's say, which was kind of a little diluted. But
well, I mean, I've seen your product in person. It really truly is very impressive. I honestly, no joke, wouldn't have had you on here if it was a waste of the audience's time. I'm very impressed by what you built.
I like to think so. But so being humble.
Yeah, and humble's cool and everything. I seriously mean it. I've seen BoXZY carve. I've seen it build with 3D filament, and I've seen it etch in with, what was that, a laser module I saw?
Yeah.
So, I saw it at a trade show, and it's pretty surprising to me because everyone seems to think that they know what it is, and then when you see it up close, you realize that you were wrong. Your assumptions were wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so BoXZY, so you typically think about it first from 3D printing perspective, as you mentioned to us during the beginning part of the show. But BoXZY is more than that. BoXZY is 3 complementary styles of robotic manufacturing, right? Robotic creation that allow you to make almost anything anywhere.
Okay.
So 3D printing just allows you to do plastic filaments
Right.
of all sorts, right? You can get wood, but it's still plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So what we are allowing you to do is essentially take your world, whatever material you're using, whatever medium is your preference, and shape that into whatever you'd like.
Now, I understand you did a Kickstarter. How did that go?
Oh, so the Kickstarter went really well. We have the single most well-funded Kickstarter in Pittsburgh history. The most funded Kickstarter in Pennsylvania, most funded technology Kickstarter in Pennsylvania history.
Wow, congratulations.
$1.2 million.
It's not a small state. I read the other day, not a joke, honestly. If Pennsylvania were a country, it would be equivalent to Turkey in terms of its economic output. I mean, Pennsylvania's a big place.
11 of the top Fortune 50 companies are in Pennsylvania.
So when you sit there and you look at, okay, it's a pretty good sized Kickstarter. That's not something to smile and laugh about. That's a big state, that does big things. So,
yeah.
Hadley, I understand you're the director of corporate services. Do me a favor, unpack that a little bit for me.
So my title is one that shifts sort of very, very frequently.
Yes, you're a startup employee. That's what happens.
Yeah. So I like to think of myself as the chief cat herder. But basically, that was the most general title that we could give that encompasses sort of the diverse array of job functions that I accomplish on a daily basis.
All right. So what are they?
So I do bookkeeping, customer service and outreach, do financial management, budget making, and then also purchasing.
Wow. It's quite a bit.
I'm probably leaving some off, but those are the ones that are floating around my brain most recently.
Yeah, once upon a time, I had all these kinds of things thrown at me, and I came up with a little saying that it's cheaper than college. Right? They're like, oh yeah, I do all this stuff. It's cheaper than college. Anyway.
Well, it's funny that you say that because my background is in writing and French.
Very good.
So I
writing and or writing in French.
Writing and so it was a double major, but I found BoXZY through Tech Shop, actually.
Cool.
Tech Shop is being a great connector.
Yeah.
Actually met this guy, Joel. I was in there visiting a friend, and Joel overheard me, and the rest is history.
All right. So when you start presenting BoXZY now, okay, now let's talk about it not as sort of the technological marvel. Let's talk about it now as a saleable product, right? How do you approach people?
I try to approach people with the wow factor.
Right.
So it helps if I have an object, or it helps if I have some kind of symbol that someone can immediately latch onto. So if I can be holding, an object, if we do an exhibition or something like that, we'll always have a bunch of demo objects around. But if I don't have that on me, then I'll just have to conjure up the image of something.
You got me with the wooden gear set.
Yes.
I thought
the wooden gear set is a great example of that. So a lot of it has been, and I don't know necessarily that this is the right path, but we've learned a lot from our early adopters during the Kickstarter. So I came on board on BoXZY right after the Kickstarter wrapped up. And the first thing I did when I first started working is I read every single message and every single comment left by every single Kickstarter backer.
I love it.
And I learned so much about what they wanted, what they didn't want, what they were excited about, what was, something we were excited about, but they weren't excited about. And that was sort of how I formed my base of knowledge. And that's how I've approached the entire sort of pitching BoXZY to other people process since then.
I absolutely love that approach. As far as I'm concerned, it's the only useful piece of research when you're trying to find out how to find your audience and how to talk to your audience. You got to find out what it is that people think about your actual value proposition and how you it's how you validate yourself, right? Is actually asking people for money, maybe having some of them give it to you, maybe having some of them not give it to you, and then read or hear or do your outreach and find out, did they understand everything? Were they happy with everything? Is there a competitor out there that maybe they were more pleased with? How are they using it? So I'm really happy to hear that that's kind of where your journey here started. I have to believe schools are a big potential client for you.
Definitely.
How's penetration into schools going?
It's been great. Schools have actually surpassed our expectations by far. We knew it was going to be a product that would be interesting for schools just because of the basic money-saving value of having a 3-in-1 machine. But we did not realize how connected the educational infrastructure is,
right,
especially regionally. So we've sold BoXZYs to schools all over the world, but recently we've been putting a lot of time and effort into developing connections regionally.
Right.
And it's paid off, and it's been great. Word of mouth has been exceptional. But it also at the same time, you get this very highly educated, very highly responsive customer group. Mm-hmm. So you learn so much from that. Maybe a little bit more than you might learn from the one-off customer who just buys one. It's going out across the country or something like that. But with the schools in our backyard, especially, and especially the ones that, haven't pulled the trigger yet, but, we might have a contact to a tech buyer or someone from the school and they want it. And the conversations that we'll have over even several months, it's very, very interesting because we hear sort of, what's going on their end, what's holding them up on their end, what prevents them from being able to get something like this, what can we do to make it more appealing for them, also what their needs are as far as the curriculum that they're teaching. So
say I'm the business manager for a school district and you have me pinned in a corner at a cocktail party for a moment. Pitch me BoXZY.
Okay. So BoXZY is an all-in-one desktop fab lab. Okay. So BoXZY is an all-in-one desktop fab lab, which sounds very confusing, but I can unpack it for you. It's basically the multi-tool of the future. You can do CNC milling, laser engraving, and 3D printing. And what that allows you to do as the business manager for this school is it allows you to give an entire STEAM device, something that you can build all sorts of classes around, and you can put it on a desk in one room. You don't have to expand your space. You don't have to invest in all kinds of accessories. You don't have to, figure out how you're going to install this stuff or the, maintenance of it. It's very simple and easy to use, and it takes up very, very little space.
How long have you been doing this?
Almost 2 years.
That's a good bit of progress in 2 years.
I thought
Because
that
you don't
was-
have a background in this, correct?
No, not at all.
Not in the manufacturing side and not in selling.
No, I think that actually gave me a really good perspective as far as selling the machine. Whenever I first met them, I didn't know what CNC was.
Right.
So coming from that and getting to the point where you're trying to explain it to people who don't understand what it was, it actually makes it a lot easier.
So, Joel, you heard the pitch. Come on, critique. Founder and boss.
So Hadley's right about the pitch for BoXZY is less verbal and more image.
Yes.
You show what BoXZY can do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we've been working on a lot. I've been working on something lately. I don't think that our market has done a very good job at making. There's something called skeuomorphic design, if I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but when I've seen it written, it's what? SKEU morphic.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So that means just finding the metaphors and the ways of operating that people are used to and copying that in your design, giving them kind of head nod to their past usages.
Right.
So like siding, the plastic, they made it wood before they made it smooth because they needed that to have people adopt it, right?
So you're talking about siding for a house looks like wood because that's what people are used to putting on the side of their house.
Yeah, and they needed to think in those terms. So what we're working on now is giving them a way of having a conceptual model of BoXZY that isn't CNC milling, it isn't 3D printing, it isn't laser engraving. Instead, it's something like the words I use. I'm playing with words right now. Smart carving, right? Using a chisel instead of showing a bit.
Right.
When they hit the button, the icon. Instead of showing a 3D printer head in the icon that you select inside the interface to go to 3D printing, it doesn't have the nozzle. It has someone laying a brick.
Right.
So using things like that, I think in our pitch later on, so we're still developing it. Hadley and I are discussing it quite a bit to build a conceptual model. To critique her would be to critique me.
I see.
So I mean, her pitch was good for what we've had, but
Quickly.
we're working on something much better.
Schools have a lot of classes that they can use BoXZY in, but they need to know that that's a possibility first. And they have their own procurement rules. They have ways in which they can and cannot buy things. I have to believe that BoXZY costs more than your traditional additive manufacturing kind of a filament printer, right? Tell me if I'm wrong.
So yes and no. So for some of the cheaper models that you can get in the hobbyist market, it is more expensive. But when you're talking about the Stratasys printers that schools are buying, it's far cheaper.
Okay.
And since BoXZY isn't just a 3D printer, it's a smart carver or smart chiseler.
Yes.
A laser chiseler, whatever you want to call
There's a cutting surface involved, and it's really intelligent.
Schools are spending $16,000 on a laser cutter. They're spending $26,000 on a CNC mill, and then they're spending another $6,000 to $16,000 on a 3D printer. And what we're offering them is $4,000 for all of it.
Right.
To give the students the exact same concepts and a really robust build so that they can make as many mistakes as they want without destroying the machine.
Okay. So why is it not in every school?
The one thing that we have not developed yet because we're so young are those networks into schools. Those are relationships that you need to build over time. They're trust relationships that happen face to face. And there are channels and ways of doing things, like you said, that you have to learn. And we're still just beginning to learn those things. So right now we start with Pennsylvania, and we're going to make Pennsylvania ours. And we're going to build those relationships as we've been doing. And we're doing pretty good, damn good job.
Yeah, for a 2-year-old company, I would say that you're doing a very impressive job, both on product and on market penetration. Now, we brought you on this program because, number one, I'm a fan, and the word is that I run things around here. And number two, because we want to help you kind of put a rocket pack on your back, and we want to help you get further than you're at right now. No disrespect intended to the level of success you've reached, but I do think it should be in every school. Frankly, I wish my kids were playing with it. But I think that's just one. And I think other people want their kids to play with it too. So I'm going to try to do more of the broad brush thing with you here. And I'm going to introduce Lisa Davidson. Lisa has been taking in all of this, and Lisa's going to help me kind of unpack what the strategy is. And we're going to poke some sticks into the strategy. We're going to take a look at, what other things we think might work for BoXZY. Lisa, what do you think so far?
Well, I thought you did an incredible job. And I purposely did not do any research on any of you, but prior to this. And that was because I wanted to be that blank slate for you all. So I thought you painted a picture for me perfectly. And there are some key things that I'm going to want you to develop. And I really want you to be thinking about your target markets. Who the value is going to be different to each one of them. The school this is stellar. This is such an incredibly smart
I thought so too.
way to go. What a smart way to go. With the whole STEM and STEAM movement, people are throwing money at that. So I think that's a great entree.
Can I wait? STEAM and STEM?
Yes.
We added an A in there.
Yes.
Because it needed to be there.
Yes.
Okay, what's the A?
It's arts.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
STEAM and STEM are such buzz words in the education field today that I think you guys have really hit a great entry channel.
Your clients are seeing spending in STEAM and STEM.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I work with a nonprofit that actually does professional development for those schools. They develop all of the courses for the teachers. They teach the teachers, and the teachers then go and bring STEM and STEAM into the classes. So this is such a huge movement. And like I said, people are investing lots and lots of money. Corporations are investing in school districts. The literacy of what you bring to the table, I think, is going to be so key. Very key.
I have a fear that they're being inundated. Do you get that kind of feedback? That they're being inundated maybe with new ideas and new products and new concepts?
The school districts?
The school districts that are being asked to buy these things. Because as you said, there is something of like a money fountain, right? All of a sudden, everyone converges on a money fountain. It's not surprising. That's just the way it is, right?
Not everyone is doing it well.
Right.
And I think the key is differentiation, and the key is going to be how well you deliver something streamlined, and you guys just explained all of that so well, so well.
And one thing I really liked was that they both acknowledged that seeing the end result product probably does more for you than anything else. My question then is going to turn into, how do you get that wider now? How do you put the end result product? How do you get that sort of love affair started with more people? Are you going to, say, conferences and speaking on this subject? Are you doing, I don't know, even direct mail? Like how are you getting that end result product in front of people so that they can be wowed? So
for schools, there's big companies can pitch all day long. They have people who design their pitches. They have bandwidth to waste a lot of people selling, right? But we don't. So what we've been doing is instead of doing the very expensive outreaches like conferences and things like that, we pinpoint a few very central events where I can build relationships or we can build relationships, and we do the face-to-face thing. And what we do is we don't try pitching them. We just engage them in a relationship first.
Right.
We ask them about their personal needs. We get them talking. And then if there's overlap between their personal needs and things that they have stated that they want, then we will engage the conversation of sales.
And I know that you want to talk to me for a reason, right? And I'm kind of used to people making an approach. Do you get that sort of like, come on, Joel, just make the ask?
No. So because the ask for me is approached differently. So when I go up to a person, first I read what kind of bandwidth they're working with at that particular occasion. And if they're looking for a pitch and ask, I'll give it to them.
Okay.
But if I see that they're working with a very limited bandwidth and they just don't want to hear anybody else speak anymore, which is quite often.
Yeah.
So what I do is I now, as I've gotten to the scene, I've been here for a while, I've got a lot of very important relationships, right? People who have a certain kind of influence, like say Kickstarter, our contacts at Kickstarter, or a different school district or something. And I'll give them something instead of ask them for something.
Yes.
And I start reciprocity there. And then I'll make an ask.
Lisa, someone's been reading your diary.
Yes. Yes.
Go on.
I'm all about, even when I started my company, I'm all about giving something for nothing at the beginning. You got to earn your value, and the prospect needs to understand that it's not all about you. You're in it for all them, and that you're there to help. You're there to make their life glorious and to solve problems that they have been scratching their head about. And when you build that kind of foundation from the beginning, money at the end becomes far less important. Far, far less important.
All right. Enough praise. We're trying to put it on every countertop. I totally agree with everything she just said, but I'm going to pretend that I don't, and I'm going to press you harder. Okay, so let's assume for a moment that you now reach saturation, right? Your schedule is totally full. Honestly, I have to believe you're pretty close to that now. Yes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is not a process that scales well, right? And again, you invented something interesting, like not an ego stroke, literally interesting. So you're going to have people bringing things to your attention, sometimes that aren't even necessarily in your interest and worth your time, right? So having you on the front lines, honestly, I'm gonna say, if I were in charge, King, for a day, I would take you off the front line, because I'm worried about your availability and your bandwidth. Does any of that ring true for you?
So I think of a business as a process, a system, an organism, right? And so there's different needs in infancy than there is in adulthood. So when I approach something right now, I need to be there with limited bandwidth, and I need to be creating the relationships so that I understand the fundamental unarticulated needs of our end users.
Yes.
Right? I need to feel them out. I need to use all of my brain, emotions, intellect, analytical abilities.
Right.
And that needs to be me, right? Because I drive the course of the company.
Hadley, do you agree?
Yes,
You
I
do.
do agree.
You don't think that distilling things down might be a more effective use of his time?
Well, so we can always do things more effectively and more efficiently.
Yeah.
That's my job, is to identify those opportunities to shore some time, just make it as efficient as possible. One thing that we're able to do, though, with Joel kind of being on the front line, is we have a small admin team who is able to provide all the backup support. So once he goes in, he meets somebody, he's able to make a connection. We have people who can follow up with them. And I find that, one of our, it's kind of counterintuitive, but one of our sales strategies is our customer service. A lot of times people in education buying, one big critique I've heard of a lot of people who've had to make purchases in technology is that, you'll buy the thing, you get it in the shop, or you get it in the classroom.
Ghost you.
Yeah. And then you can't call anybody unless you got the special premium plan, or you can't, your teacher, you might have one teacher who knows how to use it, but what happens if that teacher is not available?
Right.
And then, everyone is spread so thin. Who's going to take it on themselves to go learn this new kind of scary thing that, that only one person knew how to use before?
Yeah.
So we're kind of all able to patch together this complete service blanket, if you will,
Right.
that allows us
like
to
it
take a
as-
little bit of pressure off Joel.
How about a quilt? Let's make a quilt.
Yeah, quilt's great. Quilt's great. If only BoXZY had a quilting head, that'd be sweet.
Come on.
So, speak to that. So right now, that is the way it is, right?
Yeah.
So they are my backup. They are so I act as the eyes and the ears when I'm out there.
Mhm.
And then they back up to that and they do a little more processing and then they feed back to me and I'm able to make more informed decisions. But at least I've been there in that organic relationship, right?
Right.
But eventually the nature of the way that I interact with schools will change because we will have had such a great grasp of their actual needs and their systems. I won't actually have to be there to understand them because we understand them. And if we've organized our organization correctly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any change in those needs will automatically be fed back to me. So Mitsubishi Electric, we went and met with the CEO a little while back. And the way that they organize their structure is they have predictive customer service. And whenever there's a problem and there's in the queue, the call queue,
Right.
the CEO sees it of the entire company, right? And then they don't just wait for customers to call them, say they have a problem. They're able to see from the machine sensors whether those problems are going to arise. And
But they're a total failure. Nobody's ever heard of Mitsubishi.
we'd like to be there.
Yeah, that's the kind of failure I could live with too. So I don't doubt that people are probably wondering, how did Lisa get selected out of everyone that I know? And now I'm going to let that cat out of the bag. Ready? Lisa's particular brand of expertise is in working with the owners and the folks who are on the front lines, the people who, and take this as the compliment that it is, who care so much about the product that they don't just hide back in the office, right? Lisa's expertise is in helping to coach founders and the people who are the big brains of the product to also do that sales process that you're doing. Again, I was at an event where you happened to be speaking. I could tell from the pitch that you gave that this was the strategy, right? I'm not trying to say that it was, in any way obvious or ham-fisted. It's something you see, and it's a legitimate strategy type. So Lisa, I'm curious now that you've kind of heard the approach. Where do you think now, and I'm going to use Joel's example of it being an organism that grows from infancy to adulthood. Where does he start pulling away? Where, is there a certain revenue amount? Is there a certain customer count? Are we talking about maybe the way he schedules his day?
I'm about generating revenue. I mean, that's ultimately my focus. So when I work with, I like to call them, sellers who have non-sellers who have to sell. Basically that's what you are, because that's not your primary function. Your primary function is to be the brilliance and to be able to look at the strategy going forward and where do you want to take this and what target markets are going to benefit? Where do you need to go? And you need to be ahead of the curve. Like, that's the most important thing that you bring to the table. The reason you're important in the sales process now is helping that discovery. So the answer to your question is going to be, as soon as you feel that you've got the discovery piece done in that particular target market, it's time to replicate the process and hand it off. Because once you're able to do that, everybody's profitability goes up. You know what I'm saying? So you've got the school thing down. I think it's time to start to phase that for now, get that revenue stream coming, and start to build on ones where you think you can be effective next.
You're talking about completely different customer types. Like,
yes.
Maybe, I think you were hinting maybe a few minutes ago about going to the corporations that are so invested in the STEAM education and maybe hitting them up directly. Is that's
a possibility. If you really want to stay in the education, in that education silo, so to speak, if that's going to be your goal and you want to help, then that would be your next that would be your next area of investment, is start to pitch some of these companies to say, if you're doing your foundational giving, or, helping build your communities, or if you're doing, again, talent development, that career stuff, and you have a place that you want to not just hand off a check, but want to hand them something where you can see a result, then again, that would be another avenue to help them help somebody. So you're kind of giving the leg up. So again, to me, it's going to be, where is your focus? If you really want to stay in the educational realm, which I think you can knock it, you can knock it out of the park. No two ways about it. But when you start to want to go into those corporations that are manufacturers, et cetera, your conversation is going to be very different.
I heard what Lisa said as far as, starting now, because it seems like you have kind of figured out maybe what schools want. And I heard what you were saying, Lisa, about the corporations that are trying to get these skill sets into their future workforce. They're likely the ones that are going to say, like, BoXZY should have a paint head. And God, that's a terrible example, but you know what I mean.
That's actually been recommended.
I don't doubt it, because it's a terrible example. It's like reading the Facebook comments. They're always wrong. And by the way, don't ever read the Facebook comments. Seriously. That's the one thing I'm going to be didactic and insistent about. Don't ever read the Facebook comments. They're always crap. But you said to us, Lisa, maybe talking to those corporations that are making a long-term, and I mean a long-term, 20, 30-year investment, ask them, what's the next thing you need? What's the next type of logic that people need to wrap their heads around? I was trying to find a way to maybe capture that when I asked Joel.
Well, and I think there is, because what I found out in working with Asset, the nonprofit that I'm working with, there's a real disconnect between education and the corporate community. They don't know how to speak each other's language. So I kind of feel like what you have could be the bridge for that, because it's something that everybody understands. Again, I'm all about the value proposition. I'm all about how you position it. If you start to think about that, how you bring the value, how you make everybody happy and everybody look good and everybody wins. And those are key things as you're putting your thing, long story short, in that scenario, it doesn't matter what the heck your product does. But if everybody wins, everybody wins,
a legitimate win,
and you can show that long-term success and that long-term result, that's a key. Like I said, all bets are off when it comes to cash, because you've shown them that this is a long-haul product. This isn't a fly-by-night thing.
Well, and now shift gears real quick. One of the requirements in school purchasing is the bid process, right? Because it's public money. And I realize that you're talking about, I think you said $4,000, right, for a BoXZY. So I don't doubt that falls beneath a lot of the bidding thresholds if they're buying just one unit. Is anybody really buying just one unit, though?
So we've had a lot of, I want to say, like testing the water purchases,
right, pilots,
where they might get one or two, and they want to see how it goes and how their staff adapts to the machine, how their students adapt to the machine. And then a lot of times we'll hear back from them and they want more.
Okay.
And then there's been a few clients who've been, right out of the gate, they want like 6 or 4 machines. And that's happened a couple of times. And we have gone through the bidding process.
So how do you bid? I can't imagine that there's anyone else that's built what you built.
They're really funny bids.
They have to be.
Yeah. They're very highly tailored bids.
So I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's a bit of a square peg round hole problem in the fact that you have to bid something that you're the only manufacturer of. Mm-hmm. And I suppose someone could bid 3 separate machines or something else that seems really ineffective. But I mean, do you really? I don't think
we've ever had another bidder. It's just, for me, I have a weird sense of humor, and it's a nice little absurd piece of paperwork that I have to fill out.
I've spent a lot of time on this. Like throughout my career, I've seen this a lot. Government purchasing is one of the most agonizing things that you can engage in. In the springtime, we're actually going to do a boot camp on government purchasing, specifically because it's really tough, right? And it's tough enough that we're going to do it in person in Pittsburgh. Like, you're going to come here, because doing it remotely, you're going to miss details. And there's a ton of them, whether you're talking local, state, or federal government contracting. There's different rules at every level. And then there's all these sort of special side rules. It's kind of like playing Monopoly at somebody else's house, right? They go, oh, no. When you land on free parking, you take the money in the middle. Wait, we don't play that way at my house. No. This is Ohio, son. You just don't understand. If you don't go through the bid process, and people want it, right? Are they writing single source letters? Have you gotten into anything like that yet?
Single sources being like the sole, guaranteeing that we're the sole provider.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've done that before. Usually it's, we are in direct contact with the person doing the purchasing, and we will, we'll answer the phone at 3 a.m. if we have to.
That is a terrible decision on your part.
Not that that's happening with school purchasing, but we're basically, whatever you need, we'll provide it as soon as you need it. We'll get it in your hands.
It is always weird when something has to go through the commodity purchasing process and it's not a commodity. Let's talk a little bit about how you're marketing. You said before, you're not a big company. You don't have the ability to just sort of throw resources, right? I have to believe there's a social element to your marketing. You already mentioned Kickstarter, and I would count that amongst social media marketing. It is always weird when something has to go through the commodity purchasing process and it's not a commodity. Just like, okay, just this square peg, it's not fitting. Get that hammer. We're just going to pound it into this round hole, and if it kills us, we're going to get it through this process.
That's why we start with the relationships, because what that allows us to do, for instance, we did a deal with the Pennsylvania Gaming Commission.
Really?
Yeah, so we start with the funders usually, and we talk to them. And we start with those relationships, and then they will bring us into schools. And many times they'll help us work around the problems.
The Gaming Commission now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to know.
They are helping Erie School District to get fabrication equipment into their schools so that they can begin to have enriched STEAM programs.
I'm going to leave it there. I don't mess with gaming people. It's just one of my rules. I have a lot of them. It's, rules for continued survival, continued ability to perambulate. Anyway, let's move on.
Well, it's, what? So I was actually kind of shocked. The people that I've met in the Gaming Commission and the people who are involved with those programs, they are some of the most down-to-earth, empathetic people that I have met in my totality of experience in the business scene and education scene. They actually are pretty seriously high-caliber people.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Let's talk a little bit about how you're marketing. You said before, you're not a big company. You don't have the ability to just sort of throw resources, right? I have to believe there's a social element to your marketing. You already mentioned Kickstarter, and I would count that amongst social media marketing. Again, I'm not 100% sure whether you can actually capture that wow moment through social, but it seems like you might be able to. Have you tried that? Have you had any success with it?
So I experience wow moments all the time just by searching the BoXZY hashtag on different social media accounts. I do this like maybe once a week if I'm just sitting in the shop and I'm bored. I'll search hashtag BoXZY, and I'm constantly reassured that there are novel ways to get this message across to people who don't know what the hell CNC is.
Right.
Just from seeing what people post. And we're trying to encourage more and more of that. But, I get surprised and get shocked and get tears in my eyes whenever I see what people are making on our machine. And I think that's the single most, effective way to communicate what it is that we're selling. One of the best things about working for BoXZY is that, I've never felt like I've had to sell anything.
But there is a true education component that gets in the way. And honestly, it's why I reached out to BoXZY in the first place. I was, when we first started talking, most interested in the idea that someone needs to know so much. Because like you said, you didn't know what CNC was. A reasonable, normal person has no reason to know what CNC is.
I still don't know what CNC
Point of fact, I have no idea. Other than the fact that people pointed it to me and went, that's CNC milling right there. And that's literally the extent of my understanding of it.
It's computer pointing.
Computer pointing.
Yeah, it's computer numeric controls. It points where you want it to go.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm not even halfway kidding you. Thank you. I sat down in front of the mic and I went, I probably should have looked up CNC before we all sat down because this party's about to start.
This is a good problem because CNC, the fact that most people don't know what it is an important problem.
Yeah.
That means we haven't spoken about our technology in ways, the skeuomorphic design that I was talking about,
Right.
in ways that they can properly cognize.
Yeah.
So that is something that BoXZY, Kinetic Gear, our company, is actually trying to solve. So we're working with both the metaphors, the sales, and the product design as one feature. And so thankfully our markets tend to use the same metaphors. But
You're right.
yeah.
But they don't know what CNC is, probably because they don't come anywhere near these kinds of things. We're talking teachers, superintendents, business managers, those types of people now all of a sudden get thrust into it. And I'm going to stay in the schools because the list is a lot longer of people who don't really know what this is, but who might benefit from knowing, right? So how do we get somebody, again, time kills all deals, all of them. If you let something sit long enough, either a better product comes along, the urgency of the demand, starts to wane. There's so many different things that can happen. And when I say a better product, I meant no disrespect. I saw your eyebrows. Good Lord. No.
Expressive.
Eventually, the Sony Walkman gets replaced by the iPod just because time has passed, right? Like something else springs up, or someone sees that you're onto something and then wants a piece of it.
We're the iPod.
You're the iPod.
We're moving on to the iPhone, though.
Okie dokie. Man, I'm not 100% sure where this metaphor goes, but I am totally on board. Punch my ticket. So am I wrong in thinking that a canned education component might help you close more deals faster?
Yes. So,
I'm wrong.
No. So you're not wrong. So I'm sorry. What we're trying to do right now, not canned. So we figured out one of the big problems with the problems that educators are having. There are a couple tiers of problems. One, administrators are buying tools for teachers without teachers having part of the process, right? So teachers are just they're having these complex tools thrust upon them,
Mm-hmm.
right? The other problem is that when they have those tools and they want to work with the machinery, they don't know what to do with it. So one of the projects as we get more funding that we'd like to do to solve those problems is to give them packages that give them entire curriculums, or give them modules to choose from if they don't want to use the entire system.
Right.
And allow them to pick between disciplines,
Right.
different kinds of mathematical learning skills. You know what I'm saying? So,
But by that point, they've already bought the product, yes?
no, so I don't want, so when I go into a school and I'm actually selling them, I don't want to just hand them a machine. I want to sell an experience
Yes.
for the teachers
Cool.
that allows them to at the same time enrich the students.
I like that. I think if you pulled a reasonable, normal person off the street, they don't want a tool. They want curriculum. They want to know basically how does it fit into a larger picture. So I'm glad you're thinking that way. I honestly was thinking that way when I asked you the question was, do we really want to talk about the tool, or do we want to talk about what you can get out of the universe of that?
So can I talk about a couple things with this? So there's two things that I've been really thinking a lot about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So transparent tools, right? So where you don't have to think about the tool, it just makes what you wanted it to make, right? So that's a great goal.
Right.
And there's another thing that I've been trying to build into the experience. I want to actually build an experience. So I was reading about a bowyer. I think that's how you pronounce it.
No idea
A
what that
person
is.
who makes bows
Oh, okay.
from a stave of wood, right?
Wow.
That's a sensual experience that uses many tools. It's a process that you're fully engaged with in meaningful ways. Every tool stimulates a memory of a process that you've learned in the past, and it gives you a different experience with the material, right? So what I want to do is create a machine that is transparent in the ways where it makes the difficult things transparent so you don't ever see them, and it makes the meaningful features of that more meaningful to you by giving you that kind of immersed experience where you're having a meaningful awareness of what you're doing when you're doing it. Your biggest projects currently give you reasons not to do them, right? They are expensive, they're complex. You may not understand how to use the tools. You may not have the sophistication of methods that are required to get to the end product.
Mm-hmm.
What I really want to do is I want to condense that space to where the creative experience is closer to the actual creation.
I see.
That is my essential goal in our company right now. There's those two goals. It's to get people from the creative process into the actual creation of the creative thing they had in their mind, and to make that process as enriching as making a bow. with hand tools.
And from a marketing and an opening presentation perspective, I don't think you're going to come much closer to gold. Seriously,
Oh, yeah,
that's a tremendous sort of statement of your values. In addition to being just a noble goal for, product direction. Now, here I come stomping on dandelions again. Well, again,
we grow back quick.
No, we're here to basically talk a little bit about just sort of the dissection of the pitch, right? Mm-hmm. So where my head's at. Mm-hmm. As I want to talk about sales process now, because now that you've got them on the hook, you got to reel them in, right? Mm-hmm. So there has to be sort of a step-by-step that you follow. Hadley, I'm going to look to you because you are the wing person here. Do you have sort of a list of stages that you take an interested party through?
Like a sales process,
essentially
a sales
process, yes.
I started this job never wanting to sell anyone anything.
Right.
So I hate using the sales terminology and stuff like that. But I definitely have developed sort of a process just by virtue of the fact that, I've had to sell these machines.
It helps you in shorthand to think of just what you have to do next. It's not intended to be sort of a manipulative exercise.
Yeah.
A sales process helps you to mentally, in shorthand, think what has to happen next in the conversation and nothing more than that. So if I'm talking to the Hadley School, I need to make sure that I've introduced myself, that they understand what it is that I sell, that they have a clear understanding of the ask, and that I ultimately ask for the money.
I think Joel mentioned earlier, we get a lot of feedback just from building the relationship. So I think my first step really, and this dictates the entire trajectory of how I'm going to sell the product.
Hang on a second. Allow me to turn myself 90 degrees so that I can see Lisa's face while you go through your sales process. No pressure.
So I start out trying to ascertain, and this whole conversation is going to culminate, I feel like, in these topics, but I try to gauge how much education I have to do with the potential buyer.
Yeah.
And that dictates the rest of the strategy for me.
Okay.
So I ask them questions, trying to figure out, what are they trying to do with the machine? If they're a teacher, what age level are they teaching? Have they had experience with the CNC machine before? Have they had experience with the 3D printer? Do they even know what a 3D printer is?
Let me pause you for a second. Lisa, what would we call that?
That's qualifying your prospect.
It totally is qualifying your prospect.
I know.
That is what that's called when you grew up in the business.
And that is a key component to how successful you are going to be with the rest of your process. And if I can just elaborate for a minute.
Go nuts.
That's where so many professional, quote unquote, salespeople go wrong. They want to go straight to telling you about what they can do for you without even understanding if what they can do for you is what you even want or need. Okay?
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
So we think that success the start of success happens with systematic empathy. So we're all very analytical, but we're all very empathetic. And so when Hadley goes through her process, she is systematically empathizing with them and trying to gauge how they're different from current customers, how they're the same, blah, blah. And she's really immersed in their process. And right now, like we were saying, it's a very important part of maybe it'll become refined, less as open, like an open-ended question as it is.
If that
now.
Ever changes, you're doing something wrong.
Yes.
If you ever take the qualification step and say that's less important, you've made a terrible mistake. Yes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So many salespeople make the mistake that they don't spend enough time there. You have to look up and down and make sure that that you can answer all those questions as a writer. Who, what, where, when, why, and how come,
And let me tell you how it manifests itself if you do it wrong. You have to cut your price.
Yep.
Or you have to make some other consideration because you're trying to make up for a poorly run qualification, right? So when you see someone having to make a deal weird, right? So in other words, we have to give this thing away. And Joel looks at you with that crazy, that shouldn't be necessary. We're already less expensive and we already provide more value kind of an expression. His disbelief comes from the fact that, again, we're back to square pegs, round holes, right? You did not properly qualify somebody, but you're trying to make a deal happen anyway. So it's really super healthy that you're doing what you're doing. Yes?
Absolutely. And that's where a lot of prospects go dark, where they'll They'll say, call me in a week. Yeah. And then you call, you email, you send an article, you do all these things, and a year goes by and nothing happens. And it's because the vital step at the beginning of all of that qualification didn't happen. It's like building a house, right? So that's why can I also dovetail here? I want to address your attitude towards the sales process. It's not manipulative. It's not how it's supposed to be. It's all about building the relationship. It's kind of like dating, okay? So you have to
Less
first...
exciting. It's a lot
No,
less
it's
exciting.
not. It's so fun. It's so fun. And when you find your groove, it's fun and you won't dread it because it'll just flow from you.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I never really wanted to be in sales in any way. And whenever I came on board at BoXZY, I genuinely, when I understood what it did, I genuinely truly believe that I can solve the problems of the people that we're selling to. So I've actually, and one of the reasons why I hate like sales terminology is it actually took me, I'd been doing what I've been doing for a very long time before I'd talked to a sales consultant. And they were like, well, what's your pipeline? It's like, I have absolutely no idea what my pipeline is. This is what I do. And the thing was that our process had grown very organically out of just, kind of gut reactions to, empathizing with the potential customer and then fulfilling their need.
That's the key to non-sellers' success in selling. I couldn't have articulated it better.
All right, I told you this was going to be a long episode, but not this long. We're going to have to pick this up again next week. This is going to be divided up. This first week, I am just sort of unofficially referring to as our practical portion of our conversation with BoXZY. Episode 8, next week, we're going to get a little bit more academic. We're going to talk a little bit more about what the fine folks at BoXZY think about the startup universe and mentorship. Lisa Davidson is going to hang out with us a little bit longer. Be sure to check out Lisa at theoutsourcedsalesmanager.com. Wait for more in 7 days.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.